Hello, welcome. It's Brian Brady and David Bonior at the Civic Pulse. Glad to have you here. We'll talk about election issues and important issues of the day. And so we're just delighted to get started again. David, how you doing this Sunday morning?
I'm doing well. The sun is shining. I'm breathing. Everything's green out there still, but turning colors. It's perfect. How
Yeah,
are
same
you?
here. Chicago's been unbelievable weather. It's the past couple months. I think people from California should consider moving here. It's starting to feel like California.
Well, you know what they say, the Midwest is the new place to be, right? Because of the
Fun.
water, all the great things we have here, despite what Trump has said about the Midwest. He was in Detroit, really just laying it on to us and how, this we're going to turn in America's going to turn into Detroit, he was saying. Just how outrageous is that? I thought, in fact, I thought, Brian, that the vice presidential candidate for the Democrats, Tim Walz, he was really great. He said, I got the quote right here. He said, maybe if he ever spent any time in the Midwest, he know Detroit is experiencing a great American comeback. Crime is down, the city is growing, factories are opening, and then he says, but all these guys know about, and he's talking about Trump. All these guys know about is manufacturing, but for them, manufacturing is just bullshit. And the vice president candidate said it for us, but he was right on. That's what they know how to manufacture that.
Yeah.
About it, the Trump people. So they're kind of into the flyover. The Midwest doesn't matter. The Great Lakes matter a lot. We have a lot of the fresh water in the world. We've got the great manufacturing base for this country that is continuing and is growing because of the changes that we've made. It's got great people. It's great universities. It's a wonderful place. It's a beautiful place. And, sometimes these people on the coast are not very sensitive or smart about it. And politically, Trump is terrible on it.
Before we jump into today's politics, we do have to go back for a moment to 1993 because you were featured in one of the most popular news pods in the country, The Daily for the New York Times, and you were kind of the hero of that pod. So the thesis from a few days ago was that the NAFTA vote changed American politics. It was the most dramatic change of American politics in the last 30 plus years. And it reshifted all the demographics of the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. And your great speech to Congress opposing NAFTA and having sort of seeing what it would do to the Democratic Party was featured there. So I got to get you to comment on that first. Do you think that's an accurate thesis? And is that why Trump does so well with so much better than we really think he should with blue collar workers, union workers, et cetera?
Yes, I think the thesis is correct, and it hasn't been talked about a lot over these last 31 years since we passed NAFTA on November 17th, 1993. I remember that evening and that day very well. We led an effort, myself and a few others in the Congress, to defeat it because we knew and understood the implications it would have. We would really mine out the ability for workers in our country who are making a decent living to have that decent living. And that's exactly what it did. We lost a million jobs in this country, good paying jobs. Now, the people who lost those jobs were able to get other jobs, but at a 20% lower level than they had.
Yeah,
it's ironic that number is the number of working class people that we've lost in the Democratic Party. About 20.
that's exactly right. And
Yeah, it fits, and so it's very, very tragic, and for those families, uh, and for the politics of the party. So it was really one of the saddest days of my life when that happened. You could see it coming. I mean, how is someone who's making a good living back then. $15 to $20 an hour. Was a good living back
With
30
benefits,
years
yeah.
ago. Yeah, but in Mexico, they were doing the same work for a buck and a half an hour.
Yeah.
Can't compete with that. And that's why we were trying to get those who wanted to put forward this idea. This is basically a neoliberal idea that you have to equate things. You have to weight things. I'll give you an example. In the European Union, before you could join the European Union, back then, it's about the same time. We're talking about Ireland, Spain, and a few other countries who were trying to get into the Union. They had to meet certain standards or they couldn't get in. Actually, Ukraine is having that same kind of issue right now with the union saying, yeah, we want you, will you come in? But you've got to get A, B, and C, your standards, wages, health, other things up. So we're operating on a more level playing field. And so that we didn't do that. We went the Reagan-esque neoliberal approach was that,
And to be fair, GDP grew, right?
Right. Who did it grow for, though? Yeah.
But it flew to an upper class, the white collar workers, right?
Right. And upper middle class to some extent, but working people who, make the country work and go every day. They get up and punch a clock still, and some, they work their hearts out, and they saw their livelihoods diminished.
When you see about the same time the shift of that Democratic base starts to move more towards college educated and away from non-college educated, right?
Right.
So the people who boomed in the Clinton years and the Obama years did not trickle down as David Stockman promised us many years ago, right?
Yes, I remember that vividly. David and I were elected in the same year at the Congress, and he became a head of the OMB, Office of Management and Budget, and then became a big part of the Reagan administration at that time.
I think it's important for folks. Why I thought that was such an important piece this week is for, I think you and I, at least me, I'm mystified at how this authoritarian, slight, either significant dementia nutball has a potential to win this race, and that so many people could still be voting for him. But I do think it might. I think that it might come back to that fact that the Democrats, in some ways, have to vote. Might have permanently antagonized a large group of voters we should be serving, right?
Well, I think that's certainly what happened in my old congressional district. I know that I could see it, I could feel it. I mean, I would get those voters because I stood with them and fought for them. But I could see it, well, you're saying that this Democratic president is going to do something about it. Well, the fact of the matter is that Clinton did not do anything about it. He was a perpetrator of the North American Free Trade Agreement with George Herbert Walker Bush, the first President Bush. And, they were looking to Obama to do something about it. And, his record was 50-50 on all of this. It wasn't great in terms of his position on trade. And so they just got fed up. You promise. They don't deliver. It's not doing anything for me. They're gonna listen to other voices. And I think it's also informative to think about what happened in that Clinton race with George Herbert Walker Bush in 1992 when Clinton was elected. Clinton was elected with, I think, 42% of the vote.
Yeah.
There was a third candidate. There was Ross Perot. Ross Perot, who was singing the same tune as basically I'm singing now on trade.
Yeah.
Got 19% of the vote.
Yeah. You and I know too. Clearly racism and misogyny play a role too in American politics, and so we're not trying to diminish that. But there's a rational reason too that some voters soured on the Democratic Party
Right.
at some point. Let's jump to today's race a little bit. And Politico came out with an article today. I forgot who the author was, and it was the pullout quote on Twitter was the people who study Trump's speeches, like, it's not just fascistic or Nazi like. He's actually what's so disturbing to folks who really study history, like the lines are almost verbatim from 1930s type rallies in Germany, and it's gotten so blatant. You talked about Detroit, Aurora, right? He's making his case that in a way that brings back 90 years ago the history of just demonizing people of color, demonizing immigrants in a way that's lock them up, ship them out, kill them, etc. And have you ever seen anything like this in your lifetime? And why is this? How could this possibly be working in 2024?
Well, I've never seen anything like it, with maybe one exception, when the Southern governors, when I was quite young, in my 20s and teens, the Faubus's and the George Wallace, who ran for president, by the way, and by the way, carried my district back to back.
Oh, wow, that's something. That
there was a really that was pretty ugly, and it was pretty bad. But Trump, it was basically, the evil was directed at back then at African Americans, still is by Trump, but it is extended now more broadly to dictatorial leaders like Putin and others. The guy from North Korea that he associates with and says is his friend, Trump says this is his friend, and also the Hispanic community, and he has no love lost for people from the Middle East, Arab Americans, Muslims. So it's pretty raw, and it's pretty ugly, and it's very, very dangerous.
He goes to California. He's going to go to New York. He went to Detroit. It seems like there's a media strategy there where they've decided that as long as he's the top story of the news day and he's beating his chest and looking macho and saying bad things about people to their face, he wins that news day. Even though we're appalled and half the country is appalled, he's still winning the news day in his mind. And is there a logic to this? I mean, the polls seem to have tightened since last we spoke. Even is this? It seems
I'm
like
not sure they've tightened much, or if they've tightened at all. Actually, I think it's always been close, and it's going to continue to be close. And what will win it is who gets their people out, who can drive their people out to vote, literally as well as figuratively, will win this election. And that's got to be our focus now for the next 3.5 weeks.
The other big news story this week was Barack Obama going out, and I thought it was interesting because Tim Walz, he's kind of too nice a guy to be a really effective attack dog, right? Like the VP. So I felt like they brought Obama out to throw some punches that maybe Walz couldn't throw. But at the same time, he also challenged. He got a lot of attention for challenging black men to get behind Harris, and there's controversy around how he gave those remarks. Was he chastising or not? Now, we're two white guys, but what you're a longtime politician. What did you think of that strategy by former president?
I'm not sure. I watched it, and I was just thinking to myself as I was watching it, and I can't do it because I'm not black and I not have that experience, but what they might be thinking, and they might not have. I think it might not have appealed to them very, very well. And I mean, maybe for class reasons. Obama is from a different, his class is, he's an upper class individual.
Yeah.
He come from that, but that's what he is now.
Mm-hmm.
And so people are always a little weary about being dictated to or preached to or lectured to by folks who aren't in the same economic class, social economic strata as they are. So yeah, I'm not sure. I hope it works. I mean, the African American community has been the best community we have in the country in terms of supporting Democrats. African American women are just off the charts in terms of what they've done historically and what they've been doing recently. And men have been pretty good too. I mean, you know, you're getting up to not close to 90% with the men, and that's pretty good too. So we'll see. We'll see if it makes a difference. But
Keith Boykin,
do you is on point. How can you vote for this guy who is, you know, he's a criminal, he's a predator, he's a misogynist, he's a racist. He proves it every day with his tweets and every other thing that you just mentioned, Brian, in terms of making the news every day. He tries to figure some outrageous thing to go after. And, you know, there's a lot of outrageous things you can do in life every day, right? We make decisions because we're rational people and we want to work as a community to try to work within a community and make things happen. He has none of that. It's all about him and how he can get the attention. And he sees that, as you pointed out, as a means of getting ahead by winning the debate on the issue every day or being in the front of the issue every day.
I thought that in the end, it's probably as good that Obama did that because I think he won the news day and got the eyeballs and stirred a conversation. Keith Boykin, who's a Black commentator I sometimes follow, he thought that if you looked at the full set of remarks, it was really around challenging Trump being masculinity, that this puffy masculinity we talked about last episode. Yeah. That denigrates women, denigrates Black folks is a weak masculinity, not a strong masculinity.
He did speak exactly to that, and you mentioned that last week on the show that this puffy masculinity phrase I hadn't heard before, but it's a good way to describe it. I'm sure they're not happy about
it. I thought about that on the spot, but I was like, oh, that's a good phrase. I'm going to keep using that puffy masculinity phrase. It reminds me, yeah. We can get into a whole episode on that. Maybe we'll bring on some folks. The real folks who are winning this election, if Harris is going to win, are women, younger voters, non-white voters. So white men like us are really the reason, right, that Trump has a shot. But you're starting to see a little bit of a shift in demographics from Biden to Harris, right? That like there's a slight uptick in white women. It's plus 50% now in the polls. You see Liz Cheney out there. I think there's a direct appeal also for suburban white women with Liz Cheney. What other interesting things are you seeing in the demographics of this race, David, that look promising or threatening to Harris?
I think it's more promising than threatening because I think we have the structure to produce people to, get them to vote. And through our organizations, the labor movement has obviously been a very big factor in getting people to vote for my lifetime. And they're very excited about Harris. And the women's movement, which has now become not only sophisticated, but so structurally adaptable to getting people to the polls as well. So I just think we have more going for us in that aspect of politics than the Trump and MAGA people have. And they've lost, as you pointed out just a second ago, a considerable number of people in the Republican Party who are sitting it out or are going to vote for Harris. And then we're talking about significant people of significance in terms of what they could bring to an administration, people who have been in the administration and who see the danger of Trump.
Yeah.
These military leaders, especially, but others as well. Liz Cheney is another one. They see how close we are to losing. What Ben Franklin once said was, a republic, if you can keep it, he said, if you can keep it.
Yeah.
Kept it now for 230 years or 40 years. But we're close now this time. So we've got to fight hard to survive this and to correct the mistakes that we have been making that have allowed people to drift to people like Trump.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but I definitely been losing sleep this past year over this election. Cannot.
I think a lot of people have. Yeah.
It's pretty. I think that's probably why we're so addicted to polls, right?
Yeah.
Because our anxiety kicks in, and we want
probably too much. I think.
Yeah.
Focus in on getting it done, like Michelle Obama said at the convention. Do something.
Yeah, and I've been pretty busy work-wise, so I've been trying to donate more. So I was like, if I can't go door knock today, I'm going to make a donation instead to either a swing senator or the state, right? Because donations add up, right?
They add up, and it's they evened up the political landscape. This populist way to contribute to campaigns now has made a huge difference and allowed us to be back in the game, because it was basically the real wealthy that were controlling the media and elections not too long ago. But now that the internet and all of that has brought the everyday person into the ring and made a difference.
I was in Anaheim, California 2 days ago, and walking through a working class neighborhood. And the light bulb went on for me, like, half of America is paycheck to paycheck or in debt, right? Maybe even more, 60%. Yeah. And so those of us who aren't, were sometimes mystified, like, how could anybody consider voting? But the raw anger that Trump brings to the table might actually more reflect the anger of a lot of the average folks out there.
Yeah, because he's running as anti-establishment, and that's how then they're feeling anti-establishment, because they're all, so most of the people in the country are one paycheck away from destitution or bankruptcy or whatever. It's, the people are living paycheck to paycheck, and it's been difficult.
There's that simmering anger out there, right?
Yes.
So it almost doesn't matter what Trump says. He's just flashing a red, hey, I can relate to that red anger, right?
But really, can he? I mean, here's a billionaire. He cares. Do you ever hear him talk about anybody else besides himself? I mean, it's really.
You see
so, I mean,
he went to Nevada. This is where what's interesting is, ideally he loses, but he's so desperate to stay out of jail, right? He goes to Nevada, says no tips on no taxes on tipped wages, no taxes on Social Security. He's giving no taxes on overtime work.
Yeah.
He's starting to open some doors that a lot of liberals are like, hey, that's not a bad policy idea. If so, there's what I worry about is sometimes you get that red anger, plus he throws in a Christmas tree gift that's unpaid for, right? And is it enough for him to swing a state like Nevada that could turn the election?
Well, that's that issue, the tip issue in Nevada particularly, very strong, and a lot of people live on tipped wages in that state, which is for the most part economically centered in Las Vegas and the tourist industry.
What did you Saturday Night Live last night? Let's end on guns. Did you see their openings? No. It's funny how humor and politics are really important, right? So they do a whole opening piece, but the joke on the Democratic side is her and her Glock, right? Her gun that
Oh
she
yeah,
keeps talking about. And they make a big, she makes a big show of how she has a Glock, right? And that's the joke. Michigan, pretty pro-gun spot. Macomb, where you were a politician. How do you think she's playing that issue correctly, or is she overdoing it? Has it come off a little bit like Dukakis in the tank? Is she overdoing it?
no, I mean, she had a gun. I mean, she bought a gun. I don't know when did she buy it, or when did she get it?
I haven't heard that. I think she said she's had it a while.
She's had it a while, so that's a legitimate thing. She feels the necessity to have one in the house, and as most people do these days. And so, yeah, I mean, but she sees the Second Amendment having some viability, but she also, and more importantly, sees the need for some gun legislation that's reasonable, that will stop this insanity that's happening in the country. She did an incredible speech. I'll tell you, one of the reasons I kind of went towards her, even when Biden was having all these problems, we just couldn't do him. We have to find somebody else. And she was a logical person, but I was a little kind of shaky about even her because I didn't support her when she ran for president the first time.
Yeah.
And I really hadn't followed her very much since. VP is someone who basically is supportive of the president and is not as out front as he is. And so I didn't really know. And then my friend Kathy Gilly says, you got to listen to this speech that she gave in Nashville, Tennessee at Fisk University. It's where John Lewis went to school, and on guns. And she did it on something called the Tennessee Three. People who may remember this, it was only a couple years ago, that these three legislators in Tennessee were leading a march of people into the Capitol to get more decent, sensible legislation on guns, because people were killed in their community in a horrific incident. And they were thrown out by the Speaker of the Tennessee legislature. They just booted them out.
The two Justins and
two of the three were, expelled.
Yeah.
Well, they got back in eventually through the law. It took them a while, but they were just she was just outraged by it because, first of all, they were doing the right thing, the democratic thing, working with people to try to get the legislature to change the law, and secondly, because they were black, they were expelled. And so she made this speech that was very powerful, and I watched it on YouTube, and I was just kind of mesmerized. It went on for about 19 minutes, as I remember timing it. And so she has it within her, but she was talking about, to your point, about guns and overdoing it. No, she believes in the right to own gun, but she doesn't believe in unfettered Wild West usage of guns. And she's for reasonable and good legislation that will reduce some of these incidents.
Yeah, and I think messaging wise, I think she's nailing it. As you know, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania,
big hunter. Yeah,
that's a big. Yeah, I saw a photo of Tim Walz today out on a hunt. They're making sure they get this message home.
Well, yeah. Well, he's a hunter. He's hunted his whole life in Minnesota.
It's a real deal, yeah.
And we have in Michigan, we have like 500,000 people come into Michigan every hunting season to hunt. 500,000. It's culturally, it's a big thing. But so no, I'll watch it. I'll see if it's humorous or funny. But you can pick up this stuff, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's fun. I'm just like you, though. I Harris, I was very skeptical of in 2020, and her messaging felt so California to me, just Midwesterner. I was like, this doesn't feel authentic.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Now I don't know if I've changed or she's changed, but she just feels like the authenticity of how she's delivering her message. She's a tough, smart lady.
She had a tough, battle to get where she is, and she was a good prosecutor.
Yeah.
She was for the people, and she was, she was a United States senator,
Yeah.
vice president. So she's been tested. She's smart. She's got great values, and she's going to be our next president.
Last question for you. To be that, she's also got to get her numbers up with the Hispanic Latino community, Latinx community. You had a thought before we got on about how she could do that. And what was that?
I think she'll be fine with the Hispanic community, and she's running like 6% below where Biden was at this time.
Mm-hmm.
And at where Biden eventually ended up with 6% more than she has right now. That's a better way to put it. And I think there's a large 25-30% in that New York Times Siena poll that are undecided right now in the Hispanic community, which I think is going to be more helpful to her. So I think that number will close.
Yeah.
The number that people seem to be most worried about, and I think justifiably so, is make sure the strong African American vote is there. And I think people are working on that, and I think hopefully we'll get there.
Yeah, kitchen table issues.
I think very high.
I think we got to just go back to basics these last 3 weeks. Kitchen table issues, donate, door knock, phone call, all that, right? That's how we're going to win this thing. And when we're losing sleep, get up and do one of those things.
Write a postcard to family or friends.
Yeah.
Who they vote for her.
Well, next week, let's do a little deep dive. Let's get a couple swing state politicians on here.
Okay.
And then we'll get a news from the front and see how we're doing. Does that sound good?
That sounds like great idea. Yeah. And that will be close. We'll be, a couple of weeks out. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thanks, David. And thanks for watching the Civic Pulse.
Brian. Yeah.
Have a great Sunday.
Everybody, be well.
Take care.